Okay, so in this video we're gonna go over what's called the math object. And what the math object is basically an object that provides us with a method to do computations such as rounding numbers and making exponential calculations and a lot of different stuff. And it also is used for generating random numbers, which can be very good for example, generating unique identifiers such as IDs and stuff like that. But to kick this off, I will just start by creating a constant, which will be a number. So we'll call it number for math. And I will set this to 5.5. And I will use decimals here to make this a little bit more interesting for us to work with a math object. And today I'm gonna mostly show you some basic useful methods for the math object that we can use. But there are tons of other ones that you guys can look up on any documentation that you can find on JavaScript and the math object. The first thing I'm gonna show you is what's called the round method. So I will create a new constant here, const, and I will name this round. Then I will set this equal to, this is how you access the math object. You write math with a big M, and then dot round is what the method is called. And then you just supply this round method here with a parameter, which is the number you want to round, basically. So a number, let's see, for math, not faux math, a number for math. And what this round method does here is that it basically rounds the number to the nearest full integer. So here, since we are on 5.5, it will round the number up to 6. So if we console.log this round, we will see that we have rounded the number. So if I refresh this, we can see that we get 6 returned here. And rounding can obviously be very useful for after we've done maybe big computations in web shops and stuff like that and get a lot of decimals. It can be of great value to being able to round it up to a full number, so it's easier to read for the customer and stuff like that. We can also round down. So I will create a new constant called round down. And to round down to the lower integer, so to 5.5 to go to 5, we use a method called floor. So math.floor. And then we supply the number that we want to round down as the argument. So a number for math. And if we console.log this, round down, we will see that we should get 5 returned instead of 6, which we see here. And then we also can round up. So if we would, for example, change this to 5.4 and save, we will see that this math.round will round it down now because the nearest full integer is 5 now instead of 6, since we're below the 0.5 mark. So if I want to round this number up instead, I would simply create a new variable here called round up, and I will set this equal to math, and then we're going to use the seal method for sealing. So it's called .seal, and as an argument it takes the number that we want to do the rounding on. So a number for math, and then I will console.log out round up log round up, and see that we get 6, even though it's below the 0.5 mark. So these are some useful methods that we can use to round numbers to make them to full numbers, basically. So if we don't want to return a number full of decimals, which can be useful in many different cases. What I'm also going to show is how we can generate random numbers, which can be very useful for many different reasons. It can be used for example, making some sort of lottery application or some sort of game based on getting random numbers each time, for example, like a dice game or something. Or it can be used for generating just unique numbers, unique big numbers for identification purposes and so on. But what I will start by doing here is that I will just show you how this looks. So I will just console.log out here, and I will again use the math object, and this time I'm going to use a method called random. And we're just going to save this and refresh. And then what we see here is that we get a completely random number here. 0.82 blah 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 blah. And sure, this can be good to have, but what you usually want to do when you create random numbers is that you want to set up an interval for the numbers to be between, and maybe we don't want a number here that is 0. Whatever this is with a bunch of decimals. But maybe I want to have a random number between 1 and 100 or 1 and 10. So how can I do that? So I will just again do this here in the console.log. And the first thing here is that I will use the math.floor method to get rid of any decimals. And then I will apply this method with an argument, the math.random method. So math.random. And then in order to set up an interval here, because this will floor it down to 0 basically, and then so what I will support this with here is that I will put an asterisk here for times, for multiplication, and then I will basically just put the number that I want to be the end of the interval, so 10 for example. So now I will have a random number between the numbers 0 and 10. So if I save this and press refresh, we can see that it generates random numbers here. So 1, 2, 8, 3, all random numbers here, 1 again, between 0 and 10. And you can sure do it like this, but we could also create a more elegant method, for example, or a randomizing function where we give the user the ability to supply the interval as parameters by giving a min value and a max value to our randomizing function. So how would we go about this? Well, I would create a new function, get random number, and this will be, I'll set this to an arrow function. And this arrow function will receive a min value and a max value as arguments or as parameters. And then what it will return is basically the function, or basically the function we wrote here before with the math.floor and math.random with a minor modification. So we will start with writing math.floor, and it will take the math.random object as its first, as a parameter here. And then what we will do is we will multiply this with the max value that the user supplies, or that we pass to this function, minus the min value, and then increment this by 1. And then after we've done this, we will just simply add on to this the min value to get a complete random calculation. So I will save this, and then here in my console.log, I will call this function console.log. I will call this function get random number, and I will supply it with a min value of 100, for example, and a max value of 1000. So now we should see a number between 100 and 1000. So if I refresh this, you can see that we get undefined. And it's because we forgot to return this. So if I save this, we can see that we get 779. Refresh again. 386. Refresh again. 622. So always a random number between these two values. Here I could, for example, put 1 and 1,000,000. Save this. Refresh again. Here we get 452,406. Refresh again. 966,469. So here you see that every time we refresh, by making a function like this, we can get very unique integers dependent on how big we make the interval. And that's basically it for this video, what I'm going to show regarding the math object. There are more things you can do with it and many more methods you can look up. But as an introduction, I think we've covered some of the most used and most useful methods to get you guys started.